So we've all heard a lot of the rumors that are going around right now about what that new race is that's coming to Total War Warhammer 2. Or actually, I'm sorry, to Total War Warhammer 1. From what we know, we're going to be seeing a new race here, and a lot of people are of the mind that the race is going to be from Norsca. A lot of the rumors that have circulated and a lot of some of the stuff that has popped up as of late would really kind of point to that as being true. We've got the rumor that you know, the hint of Wulfric the Wanderer, and the hint of the fact that we're so cold at being in the north, and Norsca itself already being a race in the game, it would just kind of make sense. For those of you who don't know about the tabletop portion of how Norsca kind of pans out, they're really rolled up into the Warriors of Chaos Army book in 8th edition. I think it was 3rd or 4th edition. There was a supplement that was released within a White Dwarf, and I've actually got that White Dwarf somewhere, but unfortunately I don't have it here. So as a result, I cannot speak about the entirety of the Norsca army list, but I can tell you it's got stuff like ice trolls, ice dragons, giants, these like shape-shifting like werebears and werewolves, and like it's a really awesome, very thematic army list. But what I'd like to do today here instead is talk about the suspected legendary lords. A lot of people have saying Wulfric the Wanderer. There's some other speculation out there about the one that's already in the game. And what I really want to touch on is Wulfric the Wanderer, but I also want to touch on Valkia the Bloody, as well as Throgg the Troll King. So the format of this video and how it's going to work out is it's very similar to our typical Lorehammer videos, where I'm going to read from the Warriors of Chaos book the actual lore blurb on each one of these legendary lords, and I'm just going to do it as if it was a legendary lord for that army in the same way we would any other Lorehammer video. But I wanted to kind of lay out that setting for you guys, and I'll have the breaks down here for those of you that only want to see the specific lord. We'll have, of course, the model pictures and everything, just like we would do normally for our Lorehammer videos. But without further ado, let's actually jump into personally one of my favorite characters for Chaos as a whole, Valkia the Bloody. And actually, I mean, you might actually pronounce that Valkia, because it's supposed to be a take on a Valkyrie. So let's read this little excerpt here. There is a legend of a cruel but beautiful warrior woman who is the consort of Khorne himself. Her violent deeds are watched over by her battle-hungry patron, and it is said that those who earn her blessing will fight in the halls of the blood god for all eternity. Her name is Valkia the Bloody, and she was returned from the dead to further the work of Khorne. Once the fell queen of a great northern tribe, hint hint Norsca, Valkia rose to infamy by decapitating anyone foolish enough to question her right to reign. This pleased Khorne greatly, for Valkia dispatched many minions of his brother gods. One such individual was Lorehammer, an unimaginably perverse demon prince of Slaanesh. Struck by the queen's cold beauty, the leering demon prince suggested that Valkia would be better suited to a life as a slave girl than as a monarch. The warrior queen did not take kindly to this. Taking up the spear Sleipnir, she flew into a berserk rage. They dueled for days, but ultimately Queen Valkia was triumphant. From that day forwards, Valkia enjoyed great favor in the eyes of Khorne. The Gore Queen meant to slaughter her way to the northernmost point of the world and cross through into the realm of chaos, personally placing the head of Lorehammer at the base of Khorne's throne. She nearly fulfilled her quest, but before a year was out, her corpse joined the thousands of others littered across the hell-stained realm. Khorne raged at Valkia's passing, and his fury was so thunderous that it awoke her from death, and taking her in his claws, Khorne reforged the queen into a form even more pleasing to him. Valkia returned to the mortal world, a vision of destructive power. Every new dawn, she descends from the skies, taking more skulls for her diabolic paramour, and choosing those who will fight on in the realm of chaos after their death. The warriors of chaos fight all the harder in her presence, for it is said that the gaze of Khorne lingers about her still. Many champions redouble their efforts, knowing that the blood god despises cowards and will strike down those who flee, whilst others see a chance to gain his attention on the field of slaughter, knowing that to become one of his chosen is a prize beyond measure. So you have a really I think amazing character in Valkia. You've seen from just the picture here. You've got this horned demon queen, the Gore Queen. What a name! Her titles are the bringer of glory, the Gore Queen. She's got this awesome demon shield, her amazing spear Sleipnir here, and she's got these awesome swept horns with these bat wings, and the way her actual hooves look, and you know how much I hate hooves. Just the whole image of her is just really corrupted looking Valkyrie, and I really, really like the way that they did it. The way I see this translating in a Total War Warhammer, though, is she's flying. She's a flying legendary lord, and that would be a really awesome dynamic to have her as, without having to have an actual mount. She can just fly, which would be kind of fucking cool, kind of fucking different. And on top of that, she's going to be able to cause fear. Hopefully, again, all this being speculative in and of itself. That little disclaimer I'm throwing in there. But she's got 3 really cool magic items that I really see translating almost directly into the game as is. She's got the Spear of Sleipnir, the Demon Shield, and the Scarlet Armor. And they each have a quick little sentence I'll read here for you. So the Spear of Sleipnir. The Gore Queen's barbed spear has slain kings and paupers alike, ripping out their hearts or striking their heads from their bodies in one deft blow. And this grants her armor-piercing and killing blow on the tabletop. I would maybe see that as anti-infantry and AP in Total War Warhammer. And her demon shield, the horned head of Lorehammer, has adorned Valkia's shield ever since the demon prince angered the Gore Queen, its hypnotic eyes gazing at all who come close. And what this does in the tabletop is reduce attacks by 1 to a minimum of 1. So the way I could see this working in conjunction with her armor, which we're about to get to, is that it would maybe reduce attack speed or something like that. Maybe, I don't want to say melee attack because I want to save that for what I would actually think is actually, you know, what I would think is the demon shield is -2 melee attack, while the Scarlet Armor I think would be -2 maybe weapon strength, in an aura around her. Or maybe it's a target, it's an ability that she can pop that would, just like some other legendary lords, they pop it, and then in that aura they get the reduction. So it's not a constant reduction. You have to pop it. You get a timed penalty on your opponent, and then it goes from there. But the Scarlet Armor here is, this suit of armor runs red with thick strings of blood, sapping the strength of all of Khorne's enemies. So again, you have that armor that's literally drawing the strength of the units around them. Another really cool thing that Valkia has, though, is this ability called the Gaze of Khorne, and it makes it so that everything around her can reroll break tests. Obviously not an issue in Total War Warhammer, but how I can see that translating is maybe a leadership bonus, or maybe every marauder around her fights a little bit harder or something of that sort. Maybe she can confer an additional melee attack, or she has like a hold the line ability that she can use to stop routing units, which is something that I do not believe we have in Chaos as is. So it's the ability to give a Norsca army, which is going to be less Chaos Warriors and way more Chaos Marauders, a chance to hold the line. Because you've got that with an Empire army, you've got that with Green Seal army, some way to boost leadership. Norsca is going to need a dynamic like that, and it would only make sense to have something like that on Valkia the Bloody, because it's kind of part of her lore too. In multiple occasions outside of clearly this book here, she comes down and helps out, and every time that she like enters the battlefield, everyone just gets up in a tizzy in a good way. There's one story where she arrives to help sack and take one of the northern dwarf holds. So anytime she appears, it's kind of it's a good omen, and it's also one of those things where everyone's a little bit more inspired on the battlefield. But that rounds out Valkia. I think she's going to be, or hoping that she is going to be an option as a legendary lord for Norsca, because I just think she's amazing. She's one of the really cool flavored units, and just look at her thematically. She's a really, really cool model. But let's jump on over here to like when you watch any of those shows on television, like save the best for last but keep teasing you with it. I'm just going to let you know right now, I'm going to do Wulfric the Wanderer last, because we all know we want to hear about Wulfrik. But I want to start in on Throgg here, also known as the Winter Tooth and the King of Trolls. Even the most lack-wit child knows that trolls are grossly stupid beasts. Nonetheless, around the campfires of the north, there persist rumors that in the depths of troll country there is an elder beast whose mutations were not just of the body but also the mind. A troll king possessed of a grim and malevolent cunning who seeks to grind the realms of man under his monstrous rule. At the heart of an icy labyrinth, strewn with the gnawed corpses of once mighty heroes, the Troll King Throgg sits, brooding upon his rocky throne. No fanfare announces his arrival, no vassals pay him tithe, and no courtiers vie for his favor. His subjects are drooling, stinking monsters, and his domain is desolate and wind-whipped wasteland. A filth-crusted crown rings one of the Troll King's tusks, a once priceless heirloom taken from a great warrior whose quest led him into Throgg's gullet. There was a time when Throgg was content purely with a life of hunting, raiding, and killing. He led his monstrous kin in ambushes and midnight attacks, each more successful than the last. Throgg had a knack of using the harsh climate of the north as his ally, for trolls are quite at home in the numbing cold. To them, a fierce ice shard blizzard is no more troubling than a light summer rain. Before long, the Troll King became infamous, known amongst the warriors of the old world as Wintertooth. Every season, great and lauded heroes would ride northwards, brave knights and adventurers all seeking out Throgg's lair to slay him. Every season, the Troll King dined upon noble flesh. One moonless night, as Throgg was picking his yellowed tusks clean with a gem-encrusted blade, he beheld the broken bodies of his prey and began to think. Throgg muttered to himself, his eyes burning with cold fire for several long days. If the race of man was so keen to fight him and his bestial subjects, then fight he would, with all the monsters of troll country at his side. That night, Throgg vowed that he would see the lands of men despoiled in the name of the dark gods. He would gather every monster, mutant, and madman under his rule, and march at the head of a nightmarish horde deep into the so-called civilized lands of the south. On his heels would come the bitter cold of winter, for where the creatures of chaos tread, the land itself warps and changes. Throgg would bring about an age of ice and darkness, and make all the races of the old world his slaves. As the Troll King marches determinedly south, his monstrous entourage grows with every passing day. Under Throgg's dominion, the creatures of the hinterlands have united into a vast army, and soon the race of man shall feel the Troll King's wrath. So really epic sweeping tale of Throgg, King of Trolls. And he's really awesome. And in tabletop, as far as 8th edition, before 8th edition got blown up quite literally, he was taken kind of sparingly. He's a very good lord for his point cost. And again, I kind of explain how that works in the tabletop. But really what that means is that he's a cheap, you can think about it as like the competitive multiplayer funds portion of it. He's a very cheap, very effective, very strong lord. By taking him, it allows you to take trolls as elite, or rather than special units, or I actually believe it's rare. They can now be taken as core units, so you can fill out an army of trolls with Throgg, which makes it a very thematic army in that. And we've already talked about how Norsca is probably going to have ice trolls and various trolls of the sort, and dragons and dragon ogres, all manners of beasts. And they even said this army is going to include quite a bit of monstrous units, which knocks out a lot of the other suspected armies like Tilly and Astalia, like some people were thinking. But with that, though, with Throgg, we kind of get maybe a mechanic, because they were saying they want to play with one of the mechanics that's going to be in Total War Warhammer 2, and I'm not sure if it's going to be a naval mechanic or what it's really going to be, but Throgg would make sense to have a lot of bonuses to monstrous creatures. In tabletop, he can actually make it so that all of your monstrous units use his leadership. So it would make sense to finally confer a leadership bonus to trolls, which on their own are not very scary because they have crap leadership. With him, you're going to be able to help bolster that leadership. And he also has a really impressive regeneration ability outside of the normal regeneration. So it's basically like he actually has the ability to more or less mutate, because he's got like a mutant regeneration. And in the tabletop, you roll on what's called the Eye of the Gods table, so he can actually burst into a demon prince, which would be just fucking awesome. Clearly, we don't have that right now, but it'd be a cool dynamic to add. He's got a breath attack with copious vomit, which allows him to basically do poison damage, and with no armor saves allowed. So maybe some sort of AP mechanic with poison damage. And they said they did want to add a feature. So if they added breath attacks in, that'd be pretty rad. And he does have one magic item I want to read here, called the Wintertooth Crown. Whether by some property of this battered crown, or by the grace of the dark gods themselves, all things bestial and savage obey the Troll King's barked commands. So basically he can stop a fleeing unit of any kind of monstrous creature. And we were saying that they were saying that with the Lizardmen we're going to get Krokkar is going to be a beast master, and he's going to have a lot more control over beasts. So if they add again another dynamic, Throgg would add that kind of monstrous creature control ability that we might see with Krokkar. Again, purely speculative, but I think putting another monstrous lord into the game, kind of like we've got one with Kolek, but with Throgg, would be really cool because he's very thematic. He is part of like the whole Norscan mythos, I guess, as you could say, as a whole, and he would confer a lot of bonuses to what would be a large monstrous unit presence in the Norscan army. But that kind of rounds out Throgg here, and we'll get to, of course, the incumbent favorite of everyone's, Wulfric the Wanderer. And in tabletop, he's also quite famous indeed. There was a big campaign they did called Storm of Chaos, and Storm of Chaos was kind of trying to create a campaign that was similar to what End of Times did, where it blew up the world. Rather than this blowing up the world, they wanted to just kind of be somewhere got all these players involved. In that, they introduced someone called Akram the Conqueror, I believe his name was. And people that know the lore a lot as well, please correct me on this, because from what I've heard, Akram the Conqueror was so popular that they scrapped Akram and brought him back as Wulfric the Wanderer, the World Walker, the Eternal Challenger. So let's read a little bit here about Wulfric. Wulfric the Wanderer is the ultimate seafaring warrior. A hairy giant of a man, adorned with the trophies of his many kills, Wulfric travels the four corners of the world and beyond. He seeks out and challenges the mightiest champions of every race and creed. For as punishment for his hubris, Wulfric is bound to a lifetime of constant dueling and violent death. A warrior born, Wulfric was never known for his hulking frame and tremendous skill at arms. He took the heads of every chaos champion who crossed his path, proudly displaying them for all to see. Many sagas were sung to his honor and his tribe, and his reputation spread far and wide. Pride proved to be Wulfric's downfall, however. At the victory banquet held in his name after he slew King Torgald at the Battle of 1,000 Skulls, Wulfric drank 4 full barrels of mead, drunkenly boasting that he was the equal of any other warrior anywhere in this world or the next. The gods have a way of punishing such rash claims. That night, Wulfric was visited by a strange emissary of the dark gods. In his dreams, Wulfric journeyed to paradises, necropolises, and fantastic netherworlds, and everywhere he passed was drowned in a great tide of blood. When Wulfric awoke, he was blessed with the gift of tongues, the ability to issue an irrefusable challenge to any warrior or beast in their own language. Simultaneously, he was cursed to wander the length and breadth of the world on a never-ending quest to prove himself against the most gifted warriors alive, living or dead, mortal or demonic. Since that fateful night, Wulfric has led a life of exile. His warriors, loyal to the end, sail with him across the seas in the sturdy longship Sea Fang. The stories have it that Wulfric's travels have taken him into the realms of chaos, where Sea Fang sailed upon the winds of magic themselves, and that the great vessel still retains the memory of flight. It is also said, perhaps because of this remarkable ship, that it is impossible to escape Wulfric once he has decided upon his next quarry. Wulfric the Wanderer is one of the most devout worshippers of the dark gods ever to journey across the world. He has made offerings of lordlings, sea serpents, and dragons to his nefarious masters. To Khorne he gives the skulls of his victims, to Slaanesh their still beating hearts, to Nurgle the contents of their slit guts, and to Tzeentch their dying breath. So again, really epic wording and everything with Wulfric the Wanderer. In tabletop, though, he plays a pretty... Sorry if that made a loud noise. He plays a pretty interesting role as pretty much a hero killer, a challenger. And in the tabletop, you can nominate challenges. If you get within a certain range, you can say, my champion challenges your champion. And you, in the tabletop, can nominate and say, okay, I accept your challenge, and I bring forth my challenger. And part of Wulfric's rule is that he chooses who he challenges, despite what the opponent wants. So he gets to pretty much go, I'm killing that guy over there. Because when he does get in challenges, he re-rolls a lot of his hits, his wounds, he gets better stats. So he becomes quite the powerhouse. How we're going to translate that, though, to Total War Warhammer 2, I am not 100% sure. There's no real evident challenge mechanic. The only thing I could think of is that if he maybe has an ability where he can click and choose a target, I'm not going to say clipping because that's kind of stupid, but and playing upon this whole notion that they want to add a mechanic that's going to be in Total War Warhammer 2, with Walk Between Worlds and Skitter Leap, we're going to have two big movement spells. Well, if we give Wulfrik an ability that maybe makes him immediately jump to a lord, or it makes him able to pass through armies directly to lords in maybe in a direct line, like you click it and he has to walk that direction, you can't stop him, that would be interesting. Maybe it gives him a charge bonus and an AP bonus while he does it, or maybe it makes him immune to fur or vigor, or something like that. Something where it makes it, rather than taunting it and forcing the unit to attack him, which I think would be a pretty new mechanic that we wouldn't see anywhere else outside of Wulfrik. So I'm not sure if they want to add something like that. I'm saying outside of that, I think that we would see something that either we get some sort of heroic killing blow, or something akin to that, where he gets a timed bonus and a timed maybe penalty to the opponent, or something that gets him to that opponent quickly, because that's the bread and butter of Wulfrik. He doesn't have any mounts; he's on foot, so he needs to be able to traverse that distance quickly and get to that opponent fast. One thing though he does have is called Seafang, as we've seen, his ship, and what that does in tabletop is it allows him to pop up on any side of the board you want him to. So what I could see that happening for in Total War Warhammer is maybe like a lightning strike mechanic that's even better, or a vanguard deployment, which we've seen in a lot of other units with the Beastmen, and we've seen them with the vampire counts. So some sort of mechanic where he has got a full vanguard deployment and can deploy wherever, or he gets to choose a lightning strike type mechanic. So it wouldn't surprise me if even both of those mechanics came in with Seafang. Or maybe with him on naval, or him in a naval combat has a different response than they would normally for most lords, because we know that naval is coming in Total War Warhammer 2, that it is going to be auto-resolved and not actually fought. But Seafang is probably going to have some sort of play in there, because he doesn't have many magic items outside of that, because what gives him the ability to fight these people in the lore is that it's described as him delivering a perfectly worded insult in the native tongue of that opponent to the opponent. Here's a little quick little blurb here. Face me if you dare, stunted whelp, or do you lack even an elven maiden's courage? I thought the sons of Grungi were great warriors, but perhaps you are no true dwarf. Indeed, maybe you are instead some breed of bearded goblin, though in truth I have seen a finer beard on a troll's backside. Wulfric the Wanderer, to Dwarf King Thurbad Stonebeard in perfect Kaha'ela Kazalid, which is of course the dwarf language. So that's a kind of his big crux, is that he delivers these insults flawlessly in the native tongue of his opponent. So it would be really cool if they finally brought back the intro kind of rallying speech that the generals used to do in pretty much every Total War before this. I really liked him in Total War Medieval 2. They're pretty damn epic. But if you finally had a non-quest battle pre-speech almost every time, if he got in there and just kind of delved out a ton of insults, and if they put like the subtitles for him, that would be a really cool mechanic. I don't see it necessarily happening, but that's just kind of some wishful thinking. But that really kind of wraps up the three big legendary lords that I think we're going to probably see, or maybe even see two of them with Norsca. I've heard a lot of people talk about Wulfrik, like I was saying, but not a lot of people talk about Valkia, and very few about Throgg. So I wanted to bring those two up, mainly because I think that they fit in very well with the theme. They are from Norsca. Valkia is a Norsca warrior queen, so it would make sense to me. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I'm thinking of doing some videos on the Dogs of War, just some little blurbs here and there of each individual one. Let me know in the comments if you think that that's something you guys would like to hear more about, because there's a lot of drummed up excitement about Tilia and Estalia. This way you guys can get a sense for what might come in a Dogs of War units, because a lot of the Dogs of War, the rule book for Dogs of War is actually predominantly Italian soldiers, but there are some additional ones like the I think there's a unit of undead. There's a high elf lord who is banned from Uthwan, and it's got a really cool lore behind him too. So if that's some stuff you guys like to see, do let me know. We do have some more videos coming out here as far as lore goes. We're gonna be doing one on dark magic here pretty soon. But anything else you guys want to know about, please do, like I said, comment below. In the end screen, we've got some links to some of the other lore videos we've been doing here recently. Maybe one on Astalia, but stuff that's kind of relevant to a lot of the Total War Warhammer 2 excitement that's coming up. But thanks for watching here, guys. Have a good one, and looking forward to getting some more videos out for you. Take care.